All right, so this is going to be a video that I am going to do a demonstration, and it's an exercise to sculpt a very silly looking ogre troll kind of head in Blender that is really for beginners, very, very beginners. If you've never really sculpted in Blender before, if you've never really done anything in Blender, if it's just like a new thing for you, then this is going to be a very simple exercise. It's fun. You can make a silly looking head. In this case, it's this kind of troll guy, and I've actually just did this video, but I'm redoing it so that it's more efficient and quick and to the point. So this is what it looks like. It looks like a kind of a Muppet kind of silly looking guy. And that's what we're going to do today. So I'm going to take this guy. I'm going to move it over here as sort of a reference that I will look at a little bit, but I won't make it look exactly like this. It'll look something like this. But let's start. So we're going to be using many tools in Blender. We're going to be sculpting, doing some very modeling, and putting a bunch of shapes together. So first thing you have to do when you do any kind of model is look at the thing that you want to make and try to break it down into basic shapes. So if I look at this, I'll turn the color off actually, so you just see the shapes. So the head here is just obviously a sphere that's just been kind of stretched out horizontally. So we have a sphere that's been stretched out horizontally. Then we have these two ears that also look like they could maybe be spheres, which were kind of stretched out and flattened and changed around. So we have a head, which is a sphere, ears, which is a sphere. The nose, which is also a sphere, and the nostrils, which are yet again spheres, stuck together. So we have sphere, spheres, sphere, sphere, sphere. Then we have some horns that are just cylinders that have been kind of tapered. And then we have some eyeballs, which are once again, guess what? Spheres. And then this kind of a hat thing. So that's it. That's all we have on this guy. So we're going to make this from scratch. All right, let's do this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a sphere. Shift A is the shortcut to make meshes. So if I go up here and I choose UV sphere, we have now a sphere. And what I'm going to do with this sphere is I'm going to immediately give it what's called a subsurface modifier to give it more resolution. You see, it doesn't have a lot of resolution here. It only has, in fact, I'll get rid of this head here, it only has 512 polygons. And that won't be enough for us to push things around very much. So we're going to immediately add a subsurface modifier. We're going to add it, I think, 3 times. And I'm going to actually apply it. So now it's a very quick way of subdividing the sphere. So the sphere, which was now previously only 512, is now 32,000. And if I go into edit mode, it's quite refined. I might have to make it even more refined, but we'll look at this for now. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is very simple. I'm going to move it out so it's more of a football shaped head like the guy has. All right, and so far, that's all I'm going to do. All right, now I want to make some ears. Put my head back. I want to make some ears like this guy. So I'm going to use a sphere. So instead of creating a new sphere here, I'm just going to duplicate this one. To duplicate something, you click it and you press Shift D and then you pull up. And now in this case, I'm going to put the ears over here somewhere and I have to shrink them down. So I'm going to press S and that, whoa, S and that will shrink it. So I want to move it like this. I want to actually stretch it out a little bit. So SX like I did the other one. And if I go to the top view, hold on a second. If I go to the top view, I want to flatten it out. So to flatten it out, I need to flatten it out over this axis, which is the Y axis. So I press S to scale and Y, and then I'm going to flatten it out a little bit. Okay. And I'm also going to make it less tall. So I'm going to scale it on the Z axis, SZ, and I'm going to shrink it down a little bit. And then finally, I'm going to rotate it a little bit. So it's not sticking, whoa, I don't know, I just hit it. So that it's not just, straight up. And again, from the top, I'm going to rotate it back a bit because it's sticking straight out of the head. I want it to kind of go back. So I have to go there and I rotate it like that, put it a little bit back. All right. Now, before anything, I want to actually mirror this. I want to have an ear on both sides. Now I only have an ear on one side. So the first thing I have to do is, if I press N on my keyboard and I go to item, you notice that these are all the statistics of the position of each object. This object has been moved around, and like because I moved it around, I rotated it, and I even scaled it. So all these numbers are not at the default setting. I'm going to apply a mirror modifier to make it appear on the other side, but you're going to notice it's not going to work right now because all these settings make it so the computer doesn't understand how to mirror it properly. So I'm going to add modifier, search, and write mirror, and I'm going to choose mirror, and nothing's going to happen. There we go. The reason nothing happened is because these need to be set to 0 and these need to be set to 1 for this to actually work. And to do that, you press Control A and you apply all the transformations. And as soon as I click this, it will now appear on the other side. Whee, there we go. So now we have an ear which has been mirrored. Now don't want my ears to look like this because they look kind of stupid. So I want to go into sculpting mode and push the ears around a little bit and carve kind of a depression in it. So I'm going to go into sculpting here, and I am now in sculpting mode for the ears. So I have a brush here. If I press F, the brush gets bigger and smaller. So I want the brush to be a bit smaller, and I want to keep the first tool that I had here, which is called Sculpt Draw. If I do this, it's going to go out. Any brush, if I press Control while I'm doing it, it's going to go in. And that's what I would like to do. I'd like to make the ear go in. And I'm going to press Shift and smooth it. That smooths it. Now my smooth at this point is pretty low. I'll put my smoothing strength to that, something like that. And it smooths the surface. Before anything, I want to make sure, I wonder why my screencast keys are not appearing here. Oh, there they go. So, get rid of that. Now I also want to pull my ears so they're more pointy. So to do that, I press G. And now I can move the ears. G is grab in Blender, which is basically move. And so I'm going to move it down. Actually, I'll put my head back in. Where was my head originally? There it is. I won't make it exactly like I did there, but you know, I kind of made the ears sort of like kind of like that a little bit, and then I pushed them in a little bit, so from the side they're more back. The tips are more back, so I'll kind of push them in, flatten them out a little bit. I'll put a little bit more smooth strength so that it smooths faster. Go back to my move tool and push it around. And I don't know, just kind of manipulate it a little bit until it's something that I like. But in this video, I'm really not going to be spending an enormous amount of time sculpting anything. I spend hours sculpting things in real life, but this is, you know, this is for the kiddies. So we're not going to do too crazy here. Go back and just go with my regular brush there, scale it down a bit, and give it a bit more of a depression in the inside part of the ear. Smooth it a bit more, move it a little bit. And I'll say, wow, I love that. That's fantastic. All right, I'm going to go back now and I'm going to add a nose. So to add a nose, I'm actually going to use the same sphere for the head, but I'm going to duplicate it and shrink it. So to do this, what I want to do is I want to duplicate it, but I want to have it stay in exactly the same position that it was. So to do that, I press Shift D like I did before, and I pull it up. But now, before doing anything, I press Escape. It snaps it back to where it was before. So now it's perfectly aligned in the middle. That's what I want, because if I had not done that, let's do that again where I didn't do that. Now it's off center, and it's going to be really annoying to try to get it to be exactly centered. So I'm going to undo that. This is what I wanted, and that was nice. It's in the middle. So now if I press shrink and if I press S, it scales it down. Whoops, I didn't duplicate my head. Better do that again. Escape. S to shrink or to scale. And I'm scaling it down like that. And now it's in the middle of the head, and I'm going to press GY. And that is the forwards and backwards axis. So now I'm pushing it out of the head. I'm going to go again to my little reference there. And I seem to have made it a little bit taller, so I'm going to scale it a bit on the Z-axis. It's a little bit lower. Put that down a little bit. And awesome sauce. Maybe a little bit less. And the ears are a little bit too big. Reapply that. Okay. So great. Now I have this. Now I want to make nostrils or nose, the wings of the nose. So I'm going to duplicate this again. I'll move it around here and I will scale it down. And I'll see what I did there. I kind of moved it down like that, I guess. I made the nostrils were a lot smaller. So SZ, I'm going to scale it more flat like that. And I'm pressing R to rotate it. Basically, I'm just making like the wings of the nose. Maybe I'll go to make sure that there's a little bit up, a little bit smaller. Okay. Let's see about there. This should be a bit back. Okay, now let's say I think this is amazing, so I'm going to set that transformation and I'm going to mirror that. So a new mirror, I don't know why I just did that, a new mirror modifier, which is now going to work because I applied it. Okay, so I have these nostrils, I have this nose, I have a head, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge all of this together. And I'll show you how I'm going to do that. Actually, first I'm going to make this a little bit wider. Okay. Now I'm going to merge all of this together. So I want to, first of all, if you're going to merge things together, meaning I'm going to make it all one object, this thing here has a mirror modifier, but this doesn't. So if you merge things together, they can't, some of them can't have mirror modifiers and some of them don't. So since only this has a mirror modifier, I'm going to apply the mirror modifier, which means now I'm going to make it permanent. So I first apply, that's now permanent, and now there's no more mirror modifier, and now I can attach everything together by clicking all of it together and pressing Shift. So I press Shift, I click the body, the nostrils, and the nose, I right-click, and I write Join. And now they're all together as one object. Now I'm going to go into sculpt mode. And what I need to do is kind of merge them together. You can see that they're actually still a bunch of separate objects. But I don't want them to look like separate objects. I want them to look like sort of one continuous object, like the nose and the nostrils should be attached. And that will never happen at this point because they're actually separate objects. And if I smooth it, it'll separate apart. It won't look really like what I want it to look like, which is one continuous mesh. To do that, I'm going to go up here to remesh. And I'm going to remesh the whole thing. This is going to merge everything together. So before I do that, I want to just make sure that my object is okay, that this is okay, that there's no modifiers or anything like that. I think there are no modifiers. Nothing there, nothing there. Okay, let me go and see what this is like. I'm going to see if I can remesh it. So remeshing, if I do it, I can control the resolution. This here, 0.1, is a bit too coarse. I know what it is because I've tried this before. This one, 0.05, might be okay. So I'm pressing remesh now, and you see that it joined everything together. Now watch what happens when I smooth it. Ah, it's all one continuous mesh. And then it's going to look more like, I guess I could say more real, even though it doesn't look real because it's a silly football monster. But at least now I can sculpt it all together and have it look more seamless. Okay, so there's a couple things I want to do. First of all, I'm going to carve out the nostrils a little bit. I'll show you a cool trick. We're going to use masking a lot in this. So masking in sculpting is when you do this. You paint a mask by pressing M. Oh, something I need to do here. Actually, something I forgot to do. When I smoothed it just now, I forgot to do something. I need to set my symmetry. I need to have this be symmetrical, so whatever I do on this side happens on the other side. And so I do this, in this case, by pressing X, which gives me X symmetry. So now if I, for example, if I do this, it will appear on both sides at the same time. I didn't do it before. That's why my sculpture was kind of asymmetrical. So I'll just re-smooth that little bit there. All right, now on to the mask, like I was going to say. If I go to the bottom of the nose and I press M, I paint on a dark area where I want to kind of push in this monster's nostrils. And I'll check it from, that's very large, those are very large nostrils. To remove the mask, while it's still in the M mode, I press Control and I paint over that. So I won't make the nostrils quite that big. And I'll check it from there. Okay, let's say I think this is amazing. This is the perfect nostril size. I will now invert the mask. And I do that by pressing Control I. Now everything except for the nostrils are protected. So I can't do anything on this black part. I can only do stuff on the white part. What I want to do is basically push in the nostrils. And to do this, I'm actually going to go to the bottom of this palette. There's a move tool, kind of the regular move tool. And this allows me to move things very quickly. So I'm going to take this handle and yank it up. And I just shoved the nostrils way up there. I'll do it again. And I shoved the nostrils way up, and I'm going to smooth it a little bit. And now when I undo the mask, I have these nostrils that I have shoved up, and it was very quick, much quicker than if I had tried to do it manually with the grab tool. Like, oh, so that was way too strong. Let me do this again. Smooth. Okay. And I will go with my regular tool and just make sure that that's okay. So I'll go F, Control, and now I'm using the same way I kind of hollowed in the ears. I'm using the regular draw, sculpt draw, and I'm pressing Control while I do it so that it actually pushes in. And now I'm just going to smooth that. All right, now I want to draw in cavities for the eyes. The eyes are going to be around here. They're kind of small and silly looking eyes. And they look kind of silly because they're kind of very close together, that's in this case, I want them to look silly. So when you make eyes for characters, the way that I do them and the way that a lot of people do them is I start off by carving out kind of the skull shape, where the eye is going to sit. An eye doesn't sit like on top of the head, it sits inside. So this is kind of like the skull. All right, so I'm going to blend that in a little bit, and then I'm going to use the same brush, pretty low, to create sort of like, well, maybe not that low, to create sort of eyebrows. So he has his kind of his sort of silly eyebrows. He's kind of a mischievous guy, and at the same time, he still has his football head. And at the same time, I'm going to do a few more things. Actually, I need the smooth to be a bit stronger. You'll notice that I keep changing the strength of the smoothing brush because the smoothing brush is you use it all the time, and depending on what you're doing, you want a stronger smooth or a less strong smooth. So I'm constantly changing. Whoops, I just undid everything I did. I'm constantly changing the strength of the smoothing brush depending on what part of the body that I'm doing. Okay, so now I want to create a mouth. So for the mouth, I'm going to start off by using this draw sharp brush, and I'm going to kind of like draw the mouth. Let's see how it is here. Okay, so first of all, I want to show you a cool trick. Whenever you need to draw smooth lines, if you go to the stroke menu and you turn on stabilize stroke, this now basically averages out the stroke that you're doing and makes it much more easy to draw a smooth line. So in this case, he has kind of a frowny mouth, and his mouth is kind of I'll do kind of a frowny mouth. And it was a lot easier to do that with the stabilized stroke thing on. Okay. Also, what I need to do is I need to push this whole part forward. So I'm actually going to mask this whole part off, the whole mouth basically, lips and everything, and I'm going to bring it forward so it doesn't just look like a football. Because normally I sculpt kind of a skull shape, but this is for kids, right? So I'm keeping it simple. Now, if I paint on the mask and press Shift, I can smooth the edge of the mask. And I'm smoothing the edge of the mask so that, well, you see when I invert it now, Control I have a smoother gradation because I'm going to be moving all this forward. If I move it and it's a harsh line, you'll see a line when I move it. So first of all, I'm just going to go and go down here, go there, move this a bit forward. And because I blended the line, it's not just shoving a chunk forward, it's kind of pushing it all in a smooth way. Okay, so that's forward. Now I'm going to undo the mask, Control M, or sorry, Alt M, and I'm going to just mask off the lower lip. Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. because I want to pull the lower lip way forward. So he has kind of like a frowny, protruding lower lip. I'm going to be a little bit more careful here, control, and actually I'll go to my stroke menu and turn on stabilize stroke for this. So I'm trying to just remove the mask on there, and then I can go back to the mask and just smooth the bottom. Oops, that's not what I want to do. Mask. Oh, and get rid of that. And just kind of feather off the bottom of this mask, because I'm going to basically invert this and inflate this whole lower lip, as you're going to see in a second. So I'm going to invert it, Control I, and then I'm going to inflate the lower lip. Maybe I'll push it forward a little bit first. And then I'm going to just inflate the heck out of it. Whoa, well maybe not quite that much. I for inflate, and I need a bit more strength than that. Inflate his big lower lip. I'm laughing to myself. I'm enjoying this type of thing. Okay, the smooth is too strong, so I gotta put this smooth way down. I'll do inflate it again. Okay, I smooth it, but I don't kill everything. All right, I'm going to take off the mask. And I'm going to actually inflate the chin a little bit. Because he doesn't have much of a chin. He doesn't have any chin, actually. So I'm going to inflate his chin. Inflate the chin. And then I'm going to inflate sort of his double chin. His neck. No, that was not, I'm being too sloppy here. Okay. There's a little bit of a chin, he has that, and now I can go and basically, without the mask, inflate the kind of part, the thick part, like the jowl. He has a sort of a jowl. And next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that draw sharp brush, the one that's used for doing kind of a, and draw what's called the nasolabial folds, which are the two folds on the sides of the face that give kind of the expression lines. And that just gives it a bit more of a expression. Because when you go, you have these two lines on the side of your head, on the side of your face that come down like that. I started to have them because I'm getting old now. What can you say? All right. I'm using now just to draw a sharp brush. I'm smoothing it out a bit so I don't have that weird ridge. And I'm going to actually remesh it again. Because now that I moved the head around, whoa, that was, okay. That was way too coarse. So I'm going to go 0, 1 now, which means that I'm making it much more high poly. And it's going to take a minute. Once it remeshes, I should have an easier time doing this. Hopefully my computer won't crash right now. Let's see what happens. If my computer crashes, I'll be a very sad man. In the meantime, I'll tell you a story. I was just a small boy. Okay, no, I won't tell you a story. Let me save it though first. That would be a good idea. And now it seems like it's going to crash once again. I hope not. All right. This happens unfortunately in Blender sometimes because Blender doesn't like things that are very high poly, and I'm seeing now it's 1.5 million faces. So 1.5 million faces is pretty big for Blender. So it is having some trouble here. So I'm just going to make sure before anything that I save it. Okay, good. All right. Let's see what happened. Did this work or did this cause me more problems? Okay, well, it's pretty high poly now, but I guess I'm going to try to smooth it. I'm going to go to the smooth, make it a lot stronger. There we go. Often when it does the remesh, it looks like it's worse because it gives all these lines, but that's actually just the surface. It's actually much more refined now so I had to kind of erase those lines that at first will scare you and say, well, it just became less detailed. Carving in the mouth here a bit more. Whoop, that was very sloppy. carving in the mouth. And I'm going to recarve the nasolabial folds now that I have this like a nice smooth, more high poly mesh. Okay, time to add some eyeballs and some teeth and horns and all that stuff. Okay, so, and also I want to change because his eyes look very stupid now. So I'm going to move this. And I'm going to move his whole forehead a bit back, actually. I'm going to go 1, and I'm going to use the regular move tool or the regular sculpt tool and just kind of bring it back a little bit. So he has more of like a big brow. Okay, move that a bit forward and smooth it a little bit. Okay, oh yeah, that's better, I think. And give him a little bit more definition under his cheekbones, even though it's a very much a monster. Maybe not, I don't like that. All right, now it's time to add the horns and all that stuff. Actually, I'll add some eyes first. Okay, now that he has sort of some kind of cavities, we can add some eyes. So let me get out of here, and I'm going to go into regular mode. Whoa, what just happened there? I don't know why it just, oh, I went, because it went to edit mode. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to add some eyes. Control A, UV sphere. And the UV sphere, first of all, I'm going to move it up a bit. It is in the wrong orientation. I want the eyes, I want that part, the circular part, to be facing forward because it's going to make it easier to actually make and color the eyes. So I have to rotate this forward. RX90 will do that job. I shrink it down like that, and I'm going to now position the eye in the right place. And I'm going to, of course, it's in the middle of the head. So now it looks very stupid. Go to the front view, move it down a little bit, shrink it even more, get it into approximately the right position, and now I have to rotate it so that this is not cross-eyed. Even though it's perfectly straight, real eyes are actually slightly off. So I'm going to rotate on the x-axis, on the z-axis, RZ, a little bit like that. I'm keeping it rough so I can see where the eye would be. Then I can put that kind of back there. Maybe shrink it even a little bit more. So he has like little beady eyes. Like, okay, now that it's over there, I'm going to, first of all, shade smooth. I'm going to now apply these transformations that I did so I can mirror it. Search, mirror. And now I have 2 eyes. Cool. All right, time to make some horns. So for the horns and the teeth, they're actually going to be made out of the same thing. Actually, before I make the horns, there's one thing I want to do for the head. Oh yeah, of course, it's super high poly, is I want to actually do something called pinching, where I'm going to pinch this lower lip and the upper lip more together. So let me just redraw, let me redraw the depth of the lip first of all. And now I want to use this thing called the pinch brush, which is this. And this allows me to basically push things together. So if I do it over there, it's going to push the lips together to make more of a crease in the middle, which is looking more like a lip and not just like some kind of strange shallow crease. So that will look better. And I can even recrease it again. Oh, sorry, there. Go with that. Draw a sharp brush, a little less strength, or a little less size actually. And actually go with my stabilized stroke, so it's clean. And stop drifting off, because I'm drifting off here. Okay, that's better. I'll go there too. Whoop, whoop. This is much easier to be done with a stylus, so I'm having a hard time doing this with a mouse. But it can be done. See, I did it. And I smoothed it too much. So less smoothing. Now I'll go back with that pinch brush, pinch. Okay. All right, sad man is all right. Inflate that a little bit. Okay, now what I want to do was to do the teeth. So I'm going to add some cylinders here, and they're going to be the same cylinders that I use for the teeth as for the horns. So I'm going to add a cylinder. There we go. I want the top of the thing to be a triangle fan. It's set on N-gon, but I want it to be on triangle fan. So triangle fan it is. All right. Now I'm going to shrink this down, and I'm going to move it over here, and I'm going to scale it on the Z-axis so it's much taller, and shrink it down a little bit more, shrink it down from the Z-axis, move it over here, rotate it a little bit, and then I'm going to rotate it forward so that it's, that it's because the horn is kind of forward. Push it down a little bit. Okay, because it's sort of like over his eyes. Okay, shrink it down a little bit, make it down even more. Now I can go and sculpt it. Actually, no, before I sculpt it, I have to taper it. Okay, and another rotation, so it's a little bit more pointing. Okay, now, to make this thing pointy, I go to Edit Mode. I go to Edge Mode here. I go click on this thing, and I'm going to, first of all, shrink it. But I'm not going to shrink it all the way. I'm not going to completely shrink it. I'm just going to do like something like that. And now I'm going to Control B and bevel it. Okay. And now that I've beveled it, I'm actually going to add a bunch of edge loops here so that I can manipulate it in sculpting mode. If I tried to sculpt this now, before I did that, it would be impossible to sculpt because this is all one, each of these are one edge loop. So I'm going to actually move this whole thing up a little bit. I did that by pressing GG twice so I can slide the edge loops like that. Okay, now I'm going to go to sculpt mode, which for some reason is taking a very, very long time every time I switch to sculpt mode. I don't know why. Oh, it didn't seem to do anything. Sculpt mode. Okay, I guess it was just my mistake. Inflate. I'm going to inflate the bottom of this thing. I'm going to smooth it out a little bit. I'll make my smooth stronger now. There we go. And inflate a little bit. And now I can just use the grab tool to kind of just, shape it a little bit. So I can, kind of tilt it forward and whatever, do whatever I want with the shape of his Han. I actually just want to make sure that it's shaded smooth. There we go. And again, I'll just go back to shaping it a little bit. This is inflate. I'm inflating it. I want to keep it I don't need the horns to be very high poly, so I'll keep them pretty low poly. And one thing I will do, one thing I can do, and what I will do, is make them a little bit more kind of planar looking. So I can use, oh my god, my smooth brush is too strong. Smooth brush is still too strong. Okay. I can use this brush called Scrape. And the scrape brush is going to allow me to kind of make a bit more planes on something to make it look like there's sort of flatter areas. So like horns and stuff and any bony thing usually has kind of, they're not like totally round. They have kind of flat areas. And so I'm just going to make a few of those flatter areas in these horns. So they look more like bone and not like a mush. You don't want mush horns. Okay. Well, that's a little bit weird looking. Okay. And now I'm going to go back to my grab tool and just make it a little bit more tapered near the top. Okay. All right. And I can do my masking if I can press M and mask it. And blend the mask a little bit. And now invert the mask. And now I can actually, what I can do is this. I'll show you. Oh boy. If I press M, I'm going to mask off the bottom part of this horn. I'm going to blend the mask a little bit. Then I'm actually going to go to rotate here, all the way down here. And if I go to the side view, I'll be able to rotate the top part back a little bit. Let's see if this works. Yeah. And then I can use the move tool, move it down a little bit, and then go back to my regular grab tool and just kind of pull that back a little bit so it's a bit more pointy. Not much, but just a little bit. Okay, get rid of the mask. Okay. Because I'm also going to use the same exact thing for the tooth in about 1 second. All right, I said 1 second. Let's do it. First of all, let me mirror this. Set the transformations, mirror it, mirror. All right, now I'm going to take this thing. Actually, I do want to smooth it a little tiny bit before I mirror it, because before I duplicate it for the teeth, because then I'm going to have to fix both. So I'll just have to fix one. G, G, bit more of a curve. Okay, I am going to use this for the tooth now. So I'm going to set it 1, Shift D, move it around, and now I'm going to show you something. When you have to move something radically that has a mirror modifier, it's very annoying. So turn off the mirror modifier and go to Object and set the origin to the geometry. And you're going to see why I did that in a second. First of all, I'll show you. I'm going to scale it down. Now that the origin is set to the geometry, when I scale it, it's scaling on its own origin. It's scaling on its own center point, and it's much easier to work with when it's like that. Okay, so let me go down now and move this around. It seemed to have rotated in a weird way. I will actually rotate it, Z. No, I guess it's okay. Okay, G, move it around. And now I have to kind of shove it in the mouth in some way. I'm going to have to move around the lip afterwards, because you can see clearly, like if I do, I'm going to rotate this and flatten it a little bit, scale Y. It needs to actually fit into the mouth because it's a tooth. So the top part should be coming out of the mouth and the bottom part should be in. But it means that I have to kind of move the upper lip of this guy a little bit so that the tooth fits and it doesn't just look like it's cutting into his lower lip. So we'll do that. Rotate a little bit. Okay. Go to the top view. Rotate it that way. Okay, I'm going to go into sculpt mode. I'm going to have a big grab brush. I'm going to move it because even though I based it on the torn, I know it doesn't, not really the same shape as the horn. It's just kind of a good basis. Okay. Okay, let's say that I like that. Now I'm going to go and actually change the face a little bit, because now I have to make the face fit this thing. So move G, 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 and I'm going to inflate the lower lip a lot, and I'm going to deflate the upper lip a little bit. So that there's sort of room for this tooth to sit there somewhere. Go back to my draw tool, my draw sharp. Oop. Now I'll just go down in there and just kind of carve out sort of like an area where the tooth is sort of hanging. The tooth is kind of pushing through this guy's lower lip. As it happens with ogres, you know, that's how it works. And then on my real tooth, come on, toothy. I'm just going to inflate the bottom a little bit, smooth it out. And go back to my head. Switching, oh, there we go. Smooth that out a little bit so it doesn't look too weird. Okay. Smooth should be a bit stronger because I have to do this. And then I'm going to mirror the tooth. Woohoo. And I'll detail the lip a little bit by doing this. Oh, turn this off. I'm going to carve a few very simple lines in the tooth, in the lip, I mean. Kind of stylized lip texture. Oh. I'm going to add a bit of a ridge. Oh, that's too much of a ridge. A ridge on the edge of the lip. Actually, no, I will add a depression to separate the ridge. And that's much too much. Whoop. There you go. I'll switch to my brush there and I'll do a couple of wrinkles kind of in the upper lip. Okay. All right. And now I will mirror the tooth after the 100 years that it takes to get to there. Okay, set these transformation. Mirror the tooth. Oh, it's already mirrored. Yay! There we go. There's the teeth. And now, last but not least, the hat. So the hat is a cool technique. We're going to, first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this because it's so huge and I don't need this thing to be that huge. So I'm pressing Control D, Escape, and I'm going to get rid of the normal face for a second. Where are all the spheres? You know what? I'm going to label stuff. Cylinder, horns, teeth. I have all this other stuff, but I'm labeling everything. Eyes, head, and this one I'm going to call head low P. For now, I'm getting rid of the head, and I'm going to have the head low poly. I'm going to remesh this head so it's way less, because I don't. Well, you're going to see why. I'm going to remesh it. This was going to save me time instead of having this thing being so gigantic. It will be a lot lighter. Okay, now this thing's a lot lighter. It's going to be a lot faster for me to work with for now. What I'm doing here is I'm going to paint the area where the hat is going to be. So I'm going to go to my mask tab. I just needed a basic form of the head. That's why I didn't care that there was that it's low poly. So I am making the mask very strong right now, very strong. And I'm painting on the areas where I'm going to have that kind of hat thing. And you'll see what I'm going to do. What I'm going to do is everywhere that I paint this dark color, the mask, it's going to copy that section of the mesh. So I'm going to be able to make a duplicate of just this part of the head. That's going to be the basis for the hat. Now it just looks like he has some very silly looking hair, but it's not hair. It's going to be a hat, man, I swear. And I swear it's gonna be a hat. It's gonna be a hat, I swear. A hat it shall be. Okay, so I press Control again to remove a bit of the mask. So it doesn't, now he just looks like he has sideburns and he's balding. Okay, so now that I have this done, I'm going to go to where it says mask here and I'm going to write extract. It's going to give me some choices and I'll just choose that, what it says. Great. Now if I hide the actual head, you see I have this, basically this plate. That's going to be where the hat is. That's going to be the basis for the hat. It's a duplicate of what I had of the head, but I just duplicated that part of it. It also created a solidify modifier, and I'm just going to solo it so you can see what this is. This is what it is. That's going to be the hat in a second. It is the basis for the hat, and it has this thing called the solidify modifier, which makes it thicker. I'm going to make it even thicker than that by pushing up the thickness so that my hat has some kind of thickness. And I'm going to keep the head LP for now. And what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to go into sculpt mode. First I'm going to go into edit mode and I'm going to select all of it and I'm going to inflate the whole thing. To do that, you press Alt and S and I'm going to inflate it. Now, if I hold down Shift, I can control the inflation a bit more. Maybe something like that. Okay. Now, if I go to sculpt mode, what I want to do is I want to smooth this thing because it's very rough, as you can see. I have to make my smoothing a lot stronger. So that's what I'm going to do. Smoothing it out. Smoothing it out. Smoothing it out, smoothing it in. And I'm going to inflate it again as I pressed I to inflate. All right, there's my basis for my hat. Oh, inflate that part so I have a hat. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the top part out. To do that, it's going to be a lot easier if I just mask off the part that I'm going to pull out. So I'm going to press M. And I'm going to mask off the kind of the top part of the hat. So I don't have to affect anything else. Smooth it by pressing Shift, smoothing the edge of the mask. Okay, now I'm going to invert it. And I actually want to go back and really make sure that this doesn't move. So I'm going to really mask the edge of this hat. Because otherwise, when I move the top, it's going to pick up off the head. It's going to be very annoying. So I'm going to do that. Then I can smooth the back part here. Smooth this a little bit. Smooth that a little bit. Okay, now I'm just going to make my big brush there and grab and pull that up. And it kind of went up to a point in this guy. Pull it up there like that. Smooth it. All these ogres wear these very silly looking kind of leather hats. I don't know why they do that, but they just do. It's just it's ogre style. Alt M to get rid of it. And now I can kind of pull it up a little bit more. Maybe I can inflate it a bit. Oh, that was way too much. Inflate a little bit like that. And I think we're pretty good. Maybe I'll move it down a bit. Go down, hat. There we go. Maybe I'll move the sideburn parts a little bit more. And there we have the basic shapes of this guy's face. I will just use the grab tool now and just refine it a little bit. Maybe push his eyes a little bit more in. Maybe push his mouth, maybe make his mouth more of a frown. Turn that frown upside down, buddy. Oh, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go here under the chin and kind of carve in where his double chin would be. Oh, and that smooth, of course, is much, much, much too strong. Undo that. Smooth it again, but not obliterate it. Oh, no, 2. All right. I can redefine a little bit of his. Oh, no, wait a second. This is the old version. That's why. Okay, get rid of it. I don't care about this one. I don't know why I'm doing this. Head LP is not what I'm using. I'm using head. That's what I'm using. Okay. Sculpt mode. Of course, it takes a million years. Save it before anything bad happens. And I'll do what I was just going to do on the other one, but on the real head, the high poly head. There we go. Pull the chin out. I think I pushed the nose up a little bit so it didn't look quite so stupid. Well, it looks stupid, of course, but I mean, it's supposed to look kind of stupid. And that's what I want to do, is I want to carve in a little bit of the double chin area and a little bit of the nasolabial fold and inflate a little bit of that jowl. And then a little bit of cheekbone action. And then I can just go and add a few little wrinkles here and there with the draw sharp brush. He's a very stylized guy, so this isn't going to be any kind of detailed wrinkles. And what I will do also is that I will use the regular brush, and I'll build up, regular brush, 1, and I'll build up a bit of skin around his horns. Smooth that a little bit. I think this would actually be good with the clay strips brush. I'm going to take the clay strips brush, put the tips around this to really strong, so it's not so square, and build up sort of a fleshy ring around the around his horns. Okay, I'll go to this brush here. Oh, too strong. It is too strong. Strong for the world. Oop. No. Okay. And all right. So there we have a very silly looking monster. A very silly looking monster indeed. But that's what we were trying to do. We were trying to do a silly monster. And we succeeded in doing a silly monster because he's very silly looking. And in the next video, we're going to color this really silly monster. So there he is. Hello, everybody. I'll get rid of the first guy. Hello, silly monster. There he is. All right. Well, thank you very much. I hope you had a great